I would say something that I've also learned, I was given a valuable tip. See the other person, see them in the best possible light.
Yeah.
You may be feeling this, you may be feeling that, but if you try and see the other person...
Not with devil horns.
You might not be feeling good, but try and see the other person in the best possible
Not
light.
public enemy number one.
Then that's definitely a useful a useful tip while you're listening.
Yes. Cool.
Successfully Married with Pete and Mel. Hi guys, so I'm Pete.
And I'm Mel.
And we are Successfully Married. Hello everybody again, good to see you all. Hope everyone's doing good. So we're continuing our series of how to navigate a successful marriage, and we're looking specifically about conflict resolution, but we're carrying on. This is conflict resolution part 2.
Yes,
all right?
And in this video today we are going to be covering how to avoid unnecessary conflict and what to do if conflict begins to escalate. So we're going to begin with how to avoid unnecessary conflict, and I'm going to jump straight in with number 1.
All right. So number 1, how to avoid unnecessary conflict is to basically, if you're you want to talk about something and you don't want it to be confrontational or unnecessarily confrontational or unnecessary conflict, the best thing to do is to if you've got something to thrash out with your partner or anything like that, listen. Good thing to do is to listen. Number 1, listen and say nothing. So that means, for instance, you might say, right, I'm going to speak, and you just listen first of all and don't say anything. You just listen to what I'm saying.
You have to bite your lip.
You listen and let me say what I'm saying, and then afterwards it can be vice versa. So you might say, right, you listen, don't say anything, and let me just say what I'm saying first. Or equally, it could be the other person that, it could be that your partner, that basically they speak and you listen, don't say anything, just listen to what they're saying first of all, because it's definitely good to try and listen and hear where the other person's coming from. So if you just try and just listen, if you listen and you don't say nothing, so as I say, bite your lip or say nothing, you might want to say something, you might want to respond, but
temptation is too great.
But just listen.
We can be honest.
But listen to what they're saying.
Yes.
Before speaking. Listen to what they're saying and say nothing. And then when it's your turn, then you speak and they say nothing. And do that, practice doing that until you both get to understand, where each other are coming from. So that's definitely point number 1, which is a good thing.
But we want to add some tips because we are being real. This is why we do real talk marriage. It is very... Especially if the emotions are there. It's not easy. Because usually you want to jump in.
You want to defend.
And you want to defend and you want to correct the other person to tell them exactly what you mean or what they should say. So some tips for that listen and say nothing is, which work for me personally, is count in your head. No, don't be distracted. Don't be distracted by the counting.
When's it going to stop?
Yes. But I'm just saying, helping you focus on, it's like counting sheep when you want to go to sleep, but counting numbers in your head, 1, 2, 3, while he's talking. So you still want to be actively listening. You don't want to be listening but like you've tuned out as well. So it's active listening. But so that you do not say anything. I don't know if you agree. I don't know what tips you use, but I would say counting your head is a tip.
Yeah, I mean,
could work.
You could try that. You could try that. I mean,
the only thing.
One of the things you could just it's not easy obviously sometimes, but no. I don't know, just try and put yourself in the other person's shoes. Just try and, as you're listening, try and I guess hear where they're coming from. Try and see where they're coming from. But just say nothing. But just try and think about the other person. And I would say something that I've also learned. I was given a valuable tip. See the other person. See them in the best possible light.
Yeah.
You may be feeling this. You may be feeling that. But if you try and see the other person,
not with devil horns.
You might not be feeling good, but try and see the other person in the best possible light.
Public enemy number one.
Then that's definitely a useful tip while you're listening.
Yes. Cool. So we'll move on to point number 2 now,
right.
Which is communicate clearly and honestly. And the reason we're saying that now, this can be men or women. Sometimes, I know for me again, because I'm putting myself in the shoes. Before, when I communicated, I'm a storyteller. That's my career. That's my passion. So I can go round and round and round and round, and I could sometimes see Pete's face go, what are you trying to say? So I had to learn to just be more direct, more clear in what I was saying, and not be fluffy with my words. I don't know how it is for you, Pete, or how it could be for men or women out there, but communicating clearly and honestly, like don't lie. Obviously, lying is just not going to help
No,
with communication
no good.
anyway. But honestly, it doesn't just mean lying. It also means just be true to how you feel. So
Yeah,
don't hold back and think, I
yeah.
can't
Don't
share
don't
that
hold it. Don't hold it
because
in.
it can't be communicated.
Not
Just be honest.
not a good idea.
Yeah.
So try and speak it, but in
a clear way,
clear,
and calm.
but to try and be calm.
Yes.
Try and be calm with it. Best not to scream your head off.
No.
Or shout.
Don't do an EastEnders. Don't do a no. Don't do that.
It's better, definitely. Be clear. Obviously, men are clear and
Generally, they're more direct.
Generally, more
in their
direct and stuff like that. And I guess
there's exceptions.
It's definitely It's always important to be honest.
Yeah.
It's always important to be honest. There's no point lying. It'll come out. It'll come out. So yeah, definitely, it's a good idea to communicate clearly and honestly, but also calmly.
Yes.
Try and do it calmly. Don't go screaming and stuff like that. Which leads me on to our third point is in terms of set boundaries and expectations. So yeah, it's good to say, right, we're not going to shout, we're going to be respectful, we're not going to say words and all this sort of stuff and upset each other, but the way we're going to speak, we're going to keep it at a certain level. We're not going to shout and start name calling and stuff like that. Listen, we're human, and so listen, life's happened and various things have happened, you know, in marriage and stuff like that, but the best way that we've learned is to obviously set boundaries and expectations, and to, one of those things is being the volume. So right, we're not going to speak, you know, above a certain volume, and we're going to speak, and we're going to you know, speak and be clear and stuff like that, and be honest. But we're not going to speak above a certain volume.
Yes.
And that's one of the things that I'd say is definitely a good point.
Yeah. I would also say, for women as well, obviously being a woman, that you need to have realistic expectations. Your husbands, they cannot read your minds. True. Before any conflict happens, it's good to sit down and just explain, because obviously we're not going to go too deep into this today. We might cover it another time, but sometimes your expectations are based on your previous life experience. So if you've seen your parents, if you've seen your parents argue and shout and scream, your expectation might be, shout and scream. So you have to come to an expectation that
together,
together,
a mutual expectation.
Both of you.
Yes, that's right. We're both happy. So right, this is the outcome. This is what we want to achieve by having this discussion. We don't want to upset each other. No. What we really want to do is want to just work something out and clear up this misunderstanding or clear up that.
Yes.
So if you outline
what your expectations
and not the boundaries are, right, we're not doing this, we're not going to be doing this, we're not going to be speaking like that to one another.
We are going to take turns. And I would say one little tip for that as well for ladies is maybe saying something to your husband, saying, right, when I'm upset or when I am feeling sad, then what I would hope when I express something to you is that you'll just say, okay, honey, I've heard you. That's just one a specific example. That might be something else. I don't know if you have a specific example.
That's a good thing. So just basically saying, just communicating that you understand. You might say, right, the expectation versus, if you understand what I'm saying, or if I understand what my wife's saying, then the other person's saying, you know what, I hear where you're coming from. I understand.
Indicating that.
I understand what you mean, saying it verbally, because otherwise
it's true.
you could be talking and you don't know that the other person actually sees where you're coming from.
Exactly.
So I'd say that's a good thing.
I say that's a good one.
It's just to repeat, but I get what you mean. I see where you're coming from. I understand how that made you feel.
Yes.
For instance.
Exactly. So number 4 is managing your own emotions and expectations. And this is a key one, because obviously when you're in a relationship, a lot of emphasis and responsibility can be put on your partner, but we have to be real, or vice versa. But the reality is, when you get married, you're still an individual. Even though you're coming together, your husband is not responsible for your happiness, your wife is not responsible for your reactions. You are responsible for your own reactions. True. And I'm reiterating it, you are responsible.
That's true.
For your own. Even if you feel like your spouse has upset you, you are still responsible for how you respond.
That's true.
And how you react. So I think
very
that's
true.
Key.
Yeah, very, very true. And also I just think, well, not that I think, I know that, what my wife's saying is correct. But what I'm trying to say is that when someone does anything, what I say is very, very important is trying to manage your own self-control and how you respond. And that's the key thing that, everybody has to work on. We're in marriage, we've been in marriage. Whatever's been said or done, how am I responding? Am I exhibiting self-control? Am I exhibiting, how am I responding? So how somebody's acting some way or somebody could act in different ways, but how am I reacting?
And that scripture, remember there's a scripture we came up with, wasn't it?
What's this got the one about
a soft word turns away wrath, isn't it? But a harsh word stirs up anger. I forget what it's taken from.
Yeah, but Proverbs 15 verse 1.
There we go.
Yeah, so Proverbs, yes, that's what it says. Yeah, so a soft answer turns away wrath, harsh word stirs up anger. But I guess the thing to bear in mind is here specifically, how are you going to respond? Whatever anybody does, whether it's a partner or anybody, I guess your reaction
is your responsibility.
I've heard that said before. Your reaction is your responsibility. I've heard that said by somebody quite famous before, actually.
Yeah.
Your reaction is your responsibility. So just bearing in mind how you respond is a key thing.
It is.
Definitely. And so our fifth point on the topic of how to avoid unnecessary conflict is to seek solutions and not blame.
Yeah.
So seek solutions. So what we're trying to get out of this is we're trying to resolve this thing, or we're trying to sort this thing out.
So don't come and be like, you did this and you did that, and that's not going to work.
Because if you say, "Oh, you did this," I mean, you meant that when you treated me like this, you meant that, and the thing is, we don't know what somebody meant unless we actually talk to them and fresh it out basically. Yeah. So avoid saying you did this, you meant that, you this, you did this, you were being horrible. Yeah, exactly. Avoid all that. I mean, you can say what you could say is, you know what, when you spoke like that, it felt hurtful to me. When you felt like that, it came across like this to me. So that's probably a better way. The other way sounds blaming. And listen, sometimes people do things. We can do things. Humans can do things that aren't that the other person may take as unpleasant. So we're not saying don't be truthful, but what we are saying is just try not to be blaming the other person. It's your fault. You did this. It's better off to say, you know what, how you spoke, it came across unpleasant. How you spoke, or when you did that, it didn't come across pleasant to me. Yes. That may be a better way. Just say, right, that's how it came across to me.
In my perspective.
I'm sure you didn't mean that. Yes. Or what were you thinking at the time? Did you mean, so you can clear things up, and you can probably realise they didn't mean that. They were just irate at the time, or they just, weren't feeling the good, and so they probably weren't even aware of how they came across.
And actually, whenever we have done that, obviously we did that more, you actually find, oh, right. So sometimes I would say because people have gotten upset over perceptive. And actually, if the person meant to upset you, that's different. Yeah. But if they haven't meant to upset you, then you're why am I getting upset?
That's right. Sometimes it can be misunderstandings and stuff like that. And as we were sort of talking about before, with tone, we talked about in our previous video with tone and communication. So sometimes it could just be that how somebody came across
in that moment
was not how they meant to come across. Exactly. And even if they did come across that way, then then you can also you can talk it out, you can explain. Sometimes you might need to apologise if you have come across a way to somebody without meaning to. Even if you meant to come across some certain way, you can apologise. Look, I'm sorry. Yeah. I was in the wrong.
Because the relationship is obviously the main thing.
And also somebody else can also explain that they were in the wrong if they were.
But it should be both people. Yes. Realising where you've come.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Okay. So we're going to be going on to... so obviously that's all well and good. This is something that we were saying that should definitely be discussed and laid out before any conflict. So don't try and do this if you're already in a conflict. It won't work. This is to talk about before you're getting married, if you're engaged, if you're a newlywed, take a time when you're both calm and sit down and say, babe, how do we, if a conflict ever arises, these are things that you put down. So this is to talk about things before. Yeah, but how to avoid unnecessary conflicts. And also what we do want to say before we sort of move on is that sometimes conflicts are inevitable. They are. When I'm saying conflict, what I'm saying is sometimes disagreements disagreements can happen. And disagreements is not necessarily a bad thing. You may see something one way. Your partner may see something in a different way. And you know what, you're human, and people can see things in different ways. So sometimes
sometimes you may have a disagreement about something, or you may you may see things in different ways, and there may be sometimes you may want to get something off your chest. You may feel that you may not be happy about something. You may want to get it off your chest or stuff like that. But I guess it's just the way that you do it.
Yes.
The way that you do it, is doing it in a healthy way or in an unhealthy way. So we're not saying that conflicts don't happen, because sometimes we're in the real world.
Yeah.
We're dealing with real people. People are human. People have got emotions, and sometimes people can feel hurt.
Exactly.
But what we're trying to say is, we can deal with conflict and stuff like that, and we can resolve conflict, or we can actually thrash things out if we need to, in a peaceful way, or in a way that we just sort of get things sorted out, nip things in the bud. So we're not saying that conflict doesn't happen. Sometimes conflicts can happen.
That's true.
And sometimes, but what we're saying is sometimes there's unnecessary conflict. And these are the things that we want to avoid: unnecessary conflicts.